As director of engineering, I spent the last year forcing my entire company to convert over to AI tooling for everyday tasks, and I regret it immensely. I recently left my position as director of AI innovation at my company, and I am going to be starting a video series focusing on retrospectives on the lessons I've learned and the mistakes and the wins that I have collected over the past year being in this position. This first video is going to focus on the mandate I introduced, forcing the entire company to move over to AI for day-to-day tasks between engineers, product people, and everything in between. We're going to cover the impact we saw on coding, on day-to-day product, non-engineering people, and the benefits and negatives of this conversion. Will I do it again? Spoilers, yes, but kind of. And in the end of the video, I'm going to cover the meta impact, which nobody foresaw. So let's get into it. First off, a quick introduction. My name is Chavdar. I am a currently unemployed software engineer of 12, soon to be 13 years. Most of my experience is in leadership. I have been a very hands-on manager and engineer. I have always had a huge passion for AI, and this is why I have been focused on AI work for the past couple of years, especially as the field has picked up traction. If you've seen this channel for any amount of time, you will know that I am a huge fan of AI. I have also many regrets in my journey, and to be honest, I get swept up in the hype phases a lot. It's one of the things I try to do less of, but I can't help it. I really get excited by new tech. I think that the biggest impact that we saw has been the impact on coding. As an engineering leader of many years, the impact of AI and the potential we have in front of us is absolutely crazy. Now, many people on YouTube have already covered the impact of AI. There have been some crash outs. There have been an insane amount of people talking about how you can start your next billion-dollar business out of your basement. Maybe the contrarian in me is going to start showing, but I don't really agree with the extreme views that people like to present on this platform, and I will try to give you a more balanced perspective on things based in reality and my own experiences. So first off, let's start with the impact that I saw on engineering output. For the experienced engineers, myself included, the speed increase was awesome. We are able to produce proof of concepts or POCs in minutes now, maybe a couple of hours if it's an especially complicated product that we need to output. But man, the impact is actually crazy. Now, this is where I have started noticing the large schism between younger engineers and more experienced engineers. The more experienced people are really able to harness this. I have seen this in myself, certainly. For the first time in my career, I have been able to not only talk the talk of a 10x engineer, but actually output the output of a 10x engineer. Or at least what we used to define as a 10x engineer. The definition has changed massively since then. It's a bit of a duh moment, but younger engineers do not have the foundational knowledge required to be able to produce quality. And AI still doesn't really have the ability to conceptualize quality code. It knows how to produce code that works, for sure. And this is how I've been pitching AI tooling to a lot of people over time. You need to be able to produce a to-do list for it. You need to have a big picture plan in your head of how things are going to work. You need to sit down and test the output of each prompt fed into the AI with the idea of building the understanding in your head of the kind of code that is being produced, and then using that information to inform further prompting and further code production. And this is simply an evolution of how code was written in the past as well. You write small chunks and like little blocks. You produce little blocks and then you stack them on top of each other, and then you create a beautiful pyramid, and then you step back and you're like, wow, this is so good and it works so well. But then you start testing the individual blocks of the pyramid, and you make sure that everything is working based on the definition for each of these blocks. AI doesn't really do this. It doesn't produce testable code. I have tested basically every single LLM available on the market. Unless you go for the block by block production where you have the full picture in your head and you have the blueprint in your head rather than letting the AI build the blueprint for you and then essentially hallucinate some kind of a feasible code structure, you're not going to get anything viable out of it. So this is where, in my opinion, we see the biggest difference between younger and older engineers, basically engineers with experience who have done this in the past, and newer engineers that are just trying to exist and, as every sane human person, are trying to take the path of least resistance so they can satisfy their task givers. Right? It's a very simple human principle, and I don't fault anybody for approaching coding this way. It's very normal. The only difference now is that in the past we didn't have any other way, so you had to read the books, and then you had to use Google, and then you had to use Stack Overflow, and now you kind of have to use AI to get stuff out, just because that is the fastest way of doing it. But it's not the most productive way of doing it. And I think the Primeagen has made a similar point in the past as well. I believe that he's now trying to give AI a full run and really just try to vibe code stuff out fully, and I'm very curious to see where his opinions are going to be in the future. I know he hates AI as it is. I've started from the other perspective of really being excited for AI, and my excitement has just plateaued at this point. And not to say that I am not going to be using AI going forward, or that I am not using AI at the moment, but I am using it a lot less. I am using it for replacement of the tasks that I think are boring, but like writing emails, for example, or writing tickets. Writing the step-by-step part of tickets, where, in a good Jira ticket, you would first have the nice bullet points, and you have the DoD and the whatever. And this is where I am noticing the big impact on juniors. I had 5 junior engineers reporting into me over the past year. I have previously worked with a different team of, again, 4 different juniors, and the difference between the learning speed between the 2 different cohorts is massive. Now, the previous cohort, I oversaw them before AI was even a thing. That was pre-ChatGPT days. And even at the beginning of ChatGPT days, I feel like they already had some experience, so they were able to really accelerate speed. And the cohort that got into software engineering after ChatGPT's introduction is kind of cooked. Sorry guys if you're watching this, but AI is coming in front of us and being like, hey, this is a very easy way of life. You could make your manager super happy because you're going to produce output so quick, right? And a manager that doesn't go and really dig into code, or doesn't have time to dig into code, is just going to say, wow, this is incredible. Look at this 10x engineer that I have in the making here. But once you start stacking more work on top of previous work, the bricks very quickly start to crumble. And this has been the biggest impact that I have seen. And the problem that I have suffered from is, okay, how do you teach people to take the hard way so that they could learn programming? How do you balance the speed of delivery versus the quality of delivery? You know what I mean? Like, and this has always been a question, of course, in the past, but now I feel like it's such a polarizing question. It almost feels like a all or nothing kind of schism. I don't know for a better word, like a separation between the 2 options. In the future videos, I'm going to be exploring this topic in more depth. I have a video coming in on the changed interview process, basically moving away from lead code style coding interviews. Also, my thoughts on the future of younger talent in the industry and their development. I really want to explore that in more depth, and I want to give the topic time to breathe. Next, I want to cover the impact on non-engineering folk in the company, who I also tried to introduce AI tooling to. For them, the move was more gradual and, to be honest, less extreme in their day-to-day. The initial introduction started with email tooling, which already a lot of people were using, but also it was a mental shift from moving away from the perceived slacker image. I don't know if you remember this, but when ChatGPT released, a lot of people, first off, didn't want to admit that they used ChatGPT for a lot of things, and then it took a lot of effort from different people in different companies to really push the cultural mentality that it is okay to use AI tooling. It's totally fine to have it write your emails and stuff like that, as long as you proofread it and, all of those extra asterisks. And this company was absolutely no exception. I would say that because it is a company aligned more with the federal government, moved more slowly than it could potentially move, but also the impact on the non-engineering colleagues was much larger once I started making moves on the cultural side. I also saw similar extreme shifts in the direction of, okay, I'm moving away from 100% normal work. Like how I do my work is defined as 100% manual labor. And then I'm going to start automating more and more and more of it. People ended up going into 95% plus AI generated work for basically everything. And then they would come back to me and be like, hey, Chavdar, what the hell, man? This AI doesn't know what it's talking about. You know, the amount of face palming I had to do over the year was just crazy, because I would have to give everybody the exact same spiel. AI is very, very stupid. You need to be very careful in how you approach it, and basically give them the same engineering spiel with the blocks I mentioned earlier, but explain it to non-engineering people who still, for whatever reason, don't perceive the world and their outputs as small modular tasks that need to be done, but they look at it as a one huge bundle of thing that I produce, and that's not how it works. Like, life doesn't work that way. Life is, everything is atoms, right? At the end of the day. So even this video that you're watching right now is a bunch of bloody atoms, if you think about it, under your screen. So there was a lot of alignment, I guess, in the mental of different people. And once this alignment did happen, and we did manage to successfully kind of temper down the 95%+ AI usage to something more moderate, people started realizing that, hey, using AI is a lot of work, and I can't be on the lazy side of the spectrum. I still have to do work. So why would I do work learning something new, which I already know how to do? So they kind of shifted again back into the other extreme of just doing 5 to 10%, if that, with AI, and then everything else was just manual work, even though it is slower. And that is something that I am still not sure exactly how to tackle. One of the approaches that I took over the year was trying to produce new tools for different people and trying to optimize some of the manual work that they had to do, basically sit down and do customer interviewing or stakeholder interviews or whatever with colleagues, and just try to understand how their day-to-day work looked like, and then try and produce tooling for them that will optimize their workflow, so they would have to move away from the 5 to 10% range into the higher range of the spectrum. Not the 95% range, of course, but somewhere in the middle, right? Where they are not investing too much additional effort, but they still gain a lot of benefit out of it. And that was quite successful for some people more than others. And to be honest, you don't have to have done this at your work to appreciate and feel this impact. Just look at the amount of AI note-taking apps or email writing apps or whatever agentic bullshit people are pushing on you. The shit sells. Like that is an actual tangible impact that AI has had on people. And that has been the point where we try to build specific tooling to mold against different people's workflows. And pro tip for a business idea for you in the future, go and understand your colleagues' workflows or your mom and dad's workflows or whatever, and build something for them. I promise you, everybody has something unique that they're doing and some kind of a special human sauce that they're putting into their own work. And that cannot be automated, but you could build a harness around that special sauce to make it really powerful and really, really useful to people, and as such, profit off of it. So, pro tip for you, I want to emphasize this point with an example from my personal life. I didn't anticipate my mom and dad to take to AI as much as they have. My dad, for example, is a realtor, and the amount of AI that he uses every day, from posting ads to perfecting his pitches for properties that he's sending out to people, is insane. Like, it's actually crazy. And I have an awesome story that I'm going to share with you, how my dad ended up winning a huge contract thanks to AI, and not because he was using it, but because his clients were using it. My dad is a realtor, as I mentioned previously, and his company has had a huge push into different social media and content creation platforms. And his specific specialty that is advertised on social media platforms is his ability to sell properties to people in Bulgaria that currently live abroad, essentially sell investment properties to people that live abroad. And this includes getting the mortgages and that kind of stuff. And this specific combination of traits that he's specializing in turns out to be very rare, because after they advertised it on YouTube, Instagram, etc., he ended up going in the hospital. He's okay now, but he was in the hospital for a couple of days and he had to go on medical leave. And there was a client calling his office and specifically asking for his name, and just ringing, and multiple days in a row they would leave messages asking for him. And eventually my dad's colleagues call him in the hospital and ask him, hey, this guy really wants to talk to you. Do you have some time? I know you're kind of, on your deathbed, or he wasn't. He was just a bit sick. But, I know you're really not in a condition to take a call right now, but can you spare 20 minutes? And he's like, yeah, of course. His servitude levels are actually off the charts. So he makes the time, goes, takes the call with this person, and they set up everything. They're going to do business going forward. And then at the end, my dad asks him, so tell me, why exactly were you burning down the phones to try and get in touch with me specifically? And the guy says, well, I asked ChatGPT and it said you need to get in touch with you specifically for my situation, where the guy's situation was he lives in the US and he wants to buy a property in Bulgaria as an investment. And ChatGPT is like, hey, you should get in touch with Chavdar's dad. And like, dude, get on top of your social media if you're a realtor watching this for whatever reason. But seriously, like, it's crazy. Crazy. Okay, this is a bit of a not here nor there anecdote. I hope you enjoyed it. And I have one more point I want to make before I wrap up this video. I want to tell you about the high-level picture of where the company is after a full year of pushing on AI and then letting go a ton and then kind of trying to find some kind of a middle. At the moment, the biggest impact that I noticed, the replies in chat and emails are too pristine now. They're too safe. They're too AI generated. You know what I mean? And you can almost get to a point where you can pinpoint exactly which model people were using, because, like ChatGPT and Claude have very specific tones that they have. And this has had a huge impact on working with remote colleagues, for example. People that I would see once or twice a quarter, if lucky. So I would mostly interact with them over text, and their tone just got so homogenized. It completely changed to be very, very different from what it is in meetings and similar mediums of conversation, where the way I'm yapping at the camera right now, people would yap, in meetings. The tone is one. And then when you start exchanging messages with that person, the tone is the tone that basically the rest of the fucking world is using now, which is the ChatGPT tone or Claude tone or whatever they use. And that had a huge impact on how close I feel to different people. I grew up playing a lot of video games, and most of my friends are people that I met online. And I say this because I want to emphasize the point that I am a strong believer of social contact over text-based mediums like text messaging or Discord or Slack, Teams, etc., whatever you use. The thing is, in a business environment, especially like this homogenization, Jesus, the harmonization of LinkedIn posts, where everybody, basically without exception, runs whatever they've written with ChatGPT, it's so annoying because everybody just sounds the fucking same. And it just ended up removing any kind of closeness I had and felt with people that are working remote. And that really sucks. Really, really sucks. And I feel like this whole approach will have a big impact on remote first companies that are kind of in between remote and they have hybrid, but not everybody's going in hybrid or full-time in the office or whatever. And they also have people that are fully remote. I feel like if the remote people don't cut down on using AI for their communication, they're going to start feeling like a number rather than a person. And I guess my advice to you is don't be one of those people. Try to preserve your unique self and what makes you special. Don't let AI erase that from you, even though it is easier. Remember that the long-term impact will be noticed sooner rather than later. And with this, I'm going to wrap up the video here. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and have a great day.